Sultan, a young man living in one of the old neighborhoods of the Gulf, was fascinated by history and the mysterious. He would spend nights reading books and searching the internet for strange stories and scary tales. On a hot summer night, Sultan couldn't sleep. He was reading a book about Jinni legends and ancient superstitions. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a strange news story on a local news website. The news story was about the disappearance of a mysterious young man in a remote mountainous area known as the Mountains of Mist. The story piqued Sultan's curiosity, and he decided to head to the Mountains of Mist to uncover the truth about what happened to the missing young man. Early in the morning, Sultan bid farewell to his family and friends and set off on his journey in his car. Sultan faced many difficulties during his journey, from the rugged and rough terrain to the heavy downpours. After hours of driving, Sultan finally arrived at the Mountains of Mist. The area was a series of towering mountains covered in dense fog, and there was no sign of life around. Sultan felt a strange awe take over him, but he continued to move forward. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to an old, dilapidated hut at the foot of one of the mountains. Sultan approached the hut cautiously and looked through a small, broken window. He didn't see anyone inside, but he noticed some scattered books on the floor. Sultan entered the hut slowly and began to collect the books. The books were ancient books that spoke of the history and legends of the region. Suddenly, Sultan heard a strange sound echoing through the hut. Sultan's fear increased, but he continued to search for the source of the sound. In the corner of the hut, Sultan found an old wooden box locked with a rusty padlock. Sultan tried to open the box, but he didn't succeed. As Sultan was trying to open the box, he heard a voice say to him, "Don't try to open it, it hides a dangerous secret." Sultan turned to find an old woman in front of him, her face covered with a black veil. Sultan asked her about the secret of the box, but she refused to answer. She just told him, "If you are looking for the truth, you must go to the Valley of Silence." The old woman disappeared suddenly, leaving Sultan in a state of confusion and astonishment. Sultan left the Mountains of Mist towards the Valley of Silence. Sultan faced many dangers during his journey, from wild predators to strange phenomena he had never seen before. After days of travel, Sultan finally arrived at the Valley of Silence. The valley was a narrow, dark valley surrounded by high rocks on all sides. Sultan felt a strange awe take over him, but he continued to move forward. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a dark cave on one side of the valley. Sultan entered the cave cautiously, using a torch to light his way. The cave was full of strange drawings and ancient symbols. Suddenly, Sultan heard a strange sound echoing through the cave. Sultan's fear increased, but he continued to advance slowly. Sultan reached the end of the cave to find a massive stone door. Sultan tried to open the door, but it was firmly closed. Sultan noticed a small hole at the bottom of the door. Sultan bent down and looked through the hole, and found himself in front of a large room lit with a dim light. In the middle of the room sat an old man with a long white beard. The old man looked at Sultan with a piercing gaze and said to him, "Finally you have arrived, Sultan, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Sultan felt a great fear, but he asked him, "Who are you? And what do you want from me?" The old man replied, "I have been the guardian of this secret for hundreds of years. I have been waiting for someone with the courage to reveal it." The old man stood up and slowly opened the stone door. Sultan entered the room cautiously, to find himself in front of an old map drawn on a rock wall. The old man pointed to the map and said, "This map shows the location of an ancient city hidden underground. They say that this city hid a great secret that can change the fate of the world." Sultan looked at the map in astonishment and said, "How can I find that city?" The old man replied, "You will find everything you need in an old wooden box hidden in one of the caves of these mountains. But beware, your path will be full of dangers and challenges." Sultan thanked the old man and left the cave, determined to find the lost city and uncover its secret. He knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but he was also filled with a sense of excitement and adventure. Sultan embarked on a new journey in search of the old man's hidden box. He faced many difficulties and dangers during his journey, from wild predators to strong sandstorms. Sultan used the old map given to him by the old man as his guide. He traveled for days on end through mountains and valleys until he finally reached a dark cave in one of the valleys. Sultan entered the cave cautiously, using a torch to light his way. After a few minutes, he reached the corner of the cave where he found the old wooden box hidden under a pile of rocks. Sultan opened the box slowly, to find inside an old book locked with a golden lock. Sultan tried to open the lock, but he did not succeed. Suddenly, Sultan remembered the old man's words about the need for courage to reveal the secret. Sultan closed his eyes and focused on his feeling of courage. And suddenly, the golden lock opened by itself. Sultan opened the old book and began to read what was in it. The book was written in a strange language that Sultan did not understand at first. But over time, Sultan began to understand the meaning of the words. Sultan discovered that the book was the key to finding the lost city. The book contained detailed instructions on how to get to the city, as well as warnings of the dangers that awaited him along the way. Sultan felt a mixture of excitement and fear. He was excited to learn more about the lost city, but he was also worried about the dangers that awaited him. Sultan decided to move forward with his journey, using the book as his guide. He traveled for days through the desert, following the instructions carefully. He faced many challenges during his journey, including strong sandstorms and wild predators. Finally, Sultan reached the entrance to a dark cave. He learned from the book that this cave was the only entrance to the lost city. Sultan took a deep breath and entered the cave. The cave was dark and cold, and the air was heavy with the smell of mildew. Sultan walked slowly along the narrow passage, using a torch to light his way. After a while, Sultan reached the end of the passage and found himself in front of a massive stone door. The door was firmly closed, and there was no sign of how to open it. Sultan remembered the book's instructions. He placed his hand on the door and recited a secret spell. And suddenly, the door opened slowly, making a scary creaking sound. Sultan entered the room behind the door, and his mouth fell open in astonishment. The room was filled with treasures, including gold, jewels, and rare works of art. In the middle of the room, there was a massive golden throne. Sultan sat on the throne and felt a mysterious power coursing through his body. Sultan realized that he had finally found the secret of the lost city. He was the chosen one to reveal this secret and protect the world from evil forces. Suddenly, Sultan felt a nearby danger. He turned and saw a group of evil creatures enter the room. These creatures were from another world, and they had come to control the lost city and use its evil power to control the world. Sultan knew he had to stop these creatures. He remembered the book's instructions, and he used his newfound power to fight the creatures. It was a fierce battle, but in the end Sultan defeated the creatures and forced them to flee the city. Sultan realized that he could not leave the lost city unprotected. He decided to stay in the city and protect its secret from those who sought to use it for evil. Sultan lived in the lost city for many years, using his power and wisdom to protect the city from evil forces. He became a legend among the people of the region, known as the Guardian of the Lost City. Over time, the outside world forgot about the lost city, but Sultan continued his mission with zeal, determined to ensure that the city's secret never reached any human being.